Hey everybody, this is Ian O'Byrne. I'm taking a look at our class for the summer. This is 407-507. We're looking at creating learning environments. We're going to talk a little bit about educational psychology. We're going to think about classroom management. We're going to talk about supporting diverse learners. And we're going to think about how do we take our expertise and our insight from our years in a classroom and figure out how can we best use that to our advantage as we create safe, supportive learning spaces for all the tiny tykes that are going to come into our classroom over the future. So I'm just doing a rather deep dive of a video to take a look at the class. This is mainly to support you. I know that this is an online class and sometimes we feel a little bit disconnected, so hopefully I can answer some of the questions that you might have. Once again, this class is all online. The easiest way to get in touch with me is through email. It's pretty pointless to call my office number right now. Most times my office number rings and it's AT&T trying to sell me long distance service. So email really is the best way to get in touch. Actually, that's not entirely true. There is a service called Google Chat. So if I go to chat.google.com, what I will soon find is, it used to be called Hangouts, but if I go to chat.google.com, I am signed in right now with my regular Gmail account. But if I go to my institutional account, I can go in and I can chat with people. So the nice thing is that I can send a message to, this is Dr. Perkins, my old department head and colleague. I could send Dr. Perkins a message and say hello. I could choose to share a folder with him or a Google Drive file. I can video chat with him if needed. But the nice thing is with Google Chat, I can text message. And so I can send messages back and forth and stay in touch with students, with colleagues. So if you go to chat.google.com and sign in with your institutional credentials, you can message me, and I recommend putting that on your device, on your cell phone, on your tablet, and you can send me messages in case you need support. So that's really the best way to get in touch, sending a message via Google Chat or through email. Once again, if you do Google Chat, you're going to need to use my CFC credentials. So if we keep moving down, we're going to see the course description. We're talking about creating collaborative, inclusive communities in our classroom. We're going to look at supporting and correcting some of the harmful teaching practices that we might have or we might think are acceptable in our classroom. You can read through the state standards and look through the outcomes for this class here. If we keep progressing down, there is one text for the class. I have other reading materials that I'll show you that are supplemental, but the required text is there that you'll need to purchase for the class. Everything else will be in Oaks. The course requirements are a bit modified, being that this is a summer class and it moves at a pretty fast pace. So first of all, attendance is a interesting term as we're in an online space, but I want you to make sure that you keep up on your reading. You are expected to read all of what I give you and then some, and dig a little bit more deeply into your content to see what fits for you. The learning modules, there will be activities for you to complete in Oaks. Please stay up on that. In terms of deliverables, there are a number of deliverables. First off, we have 4 weeks in this pretty fast summer course. So the first of which is each week you'll have a reflective journal entry. You will have 4 posts that you write up in a Google Doc and submit to me. Please note that the second post you'll need to talk to a classroom teacher. So you might want to reach out and interview someone over the next week or two or have discussions. If you cannot find someone to talk to, get in touch with me and I will make some sort of connection for you. You're going to complete an assignment where you're going to think about your classroom of the future. You're going to design and develop your classroom of the future. You're going to think about your experiences in learning environments up to this point and think about what sort of environment you want for your future classroom. There's also Flipgrid group discussions. So normally this class would have some face-to-face meetings. We obviously are not having them because it's online and other circumstances. In lieu of the face-to-face meetings, I made the decision not to hold online synchronous Zoom meetings, meaning we would sit down and replicate that face-to-face meeting with a 1, 2, or 3 hour Zoom meeting. The hope is that we can use Flipgrid as a way to have asynchronous, meaning it's not happening at the same time, discussions as we work through the materials. So there are 10 chapters that we're reading, and so there are 10 individual discussions for Flipgrid. So you'll have a chance to go in, have an initial response, but then also respond to 2 of your peers and basically have a little bit of dialogue about the readings. There is also a midterm and a final for the course. These are pretty basic. They are multiple choice readings based upon, there are multiple choice assessments based on the readings. So we'll have some prep for that. In terms of late assignments, it's heavily modified because the class operates at a fairly fast pace. And so please don't get behind. I know that it is the summer. I know that there's other things that are on your docket. But if you feel like something is coming up and you will be behind, please let me know as soon as possible. Mainly because we are in and out in this class in a month. So we move pretty quickly. We see the assignments here and the point weights. If we move in, you'll notice that the schedule is pretty simple. So we have week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Each week is pretty much designed the same way. So I'll take a look at week 2 just to keep us on the same page. So we look at week 2, you have readings. We will get to that in a second. So this is the Jones and Jones book, chapters 3, 4, and 5. In week 1, you are to read chapters 1 and 2 to get us started. There is a journal prompt. So you will basically go in, actually let's look up in here. So you're going to respond to the journal prompt that is in Oaks. There is a prompt there for you to respond to. And then the Flipgrid discussions, there are 2 or 3 in this case for you to respond to. So pretty simple. Other information down here below. The class is built into modules so that you can pay attention and make it a little bit easier for you to understand. The hope is that you can work synchronously and asynchronously with partners in the class and communicate with others and act as a professional. The hope is that you do act as a professional and you can stay up on your reading, stay up on your work, but also be a good colleague and a good peer in the class. I do not believe that anything in this class will be controversial or offensive. That being said, we must understand that there is always power and politics in education. We must understand that there are times when we should critically examine our history as a learner and think about a better possible way for our students. We have to always problematize our perspective and problematize our privilege to understand how some of the lives of our students may not be like the lives that we have led. The grading components are here. The honor code and academic integrity is also here. You can read through that at your leisure. If you have any modifications you need or accommodations that you need for the class, please get in touch with me and let me know. You should have some sort of communication from CFC that you can forward to me, but by all means, if there's anything that I can do to assist you in this class, please send me a note or give me a phone call or an email or a Google chat, and I'll make those modifications in the class. My belief is that all of us have individualized educational plans. Some of them are signed, some are not. If you need assistance with study strategies, speaking, writing skills, course content, I definitely recommend checking out the Center for Student Learning, the CSL. The CSL has a variety of incredible resources that are there for you. They're there to assist you as you move through the classes. I believe that all of us can learn. I believe that all of us value from positive human interaction. I believe that we should create a safe space in this classroom where we can focus on inquiry and reflection and self-assessment. I believe in learning environments that we'll talk about in this class. I believe in learning environments where they are co-constructive, they are collaborative, and we focus on that inquiry in all of our work. I think that, and I try to remain sensible to community and cultural context as we move through our materials. So that being said, let's take a look at OAKS. So OAKS is a primary learning management space, our primary LMS. You can see this is for 407, but it mirrors the learning management system that we set up for 507. So if I look through, the main page will have our announcements. I will regularly post announcements in here. This will be our main way to stay in touch and keep you updated on what's happening in class. I will try and remain focused in the announcements, but you will see numerous announcements from me as I roll things out in the class and make sure that everybody's on task. I will try and answer larger group questions as we work through our materials. So that's the announcements piece. If I go into content, in content, you'll notice that there is a general overview. I believe in chunking course content to make it a little bit easier for you to consume and not get lost. So we have our overview of what's going to happen in the class, just a general announcement saying hello. If you go to the table of contents, that will be the overview of all materials. So if I click down, you'll notice under table of contents, I have course documents, weekly topics, and then supplemental resources. So course documents, this is going to be stuff that is germane to all elements of the course. These are materials that I may specifically reference that you need to be able to consume and understand. They may be things that are helpful, very helpful, but I don't specifically reference it. So please take the time to work your way through the course documents and see what materials are in there, see what you need to know. The weekly topics and assignments walks you through the 4 weeks that we have in the class so that you know what the expectations are, you know what we are doing and what we're focusing on. And lastly, the supplemental resources is content that is used as an extension of class. Some of this I will reference in class, some of this I will talk about in class, and I will suggest that you use. Other stuff I will not talk about and not reference, but you should by all means get in there and dig through. There's a lot of gems in there. In my teaching experience, I always find that it's good to have a bag of tricks or a bag or a box of supplemental resources and strategies. And at times you're going to want to dig into that and use that, and other times you won't need it. So that's my bag of tricks for this class. So let's dive in a little bit. So if I go to course documents, you'll notice I have a number of things baked in. The course syllabus we already took a look at is there. This class in a nutshell is just an overview, the essential questions for the class. This class should prepare you for the PLT. So if this class is going to prepare us for the PLT, I put together a document that indicates pretty much everything that you're going to need for the PLT, the principles of learning and teaching. So this is sort of like a study guide or a cheat sheet that you might want to save and take notes as you're working your way through the class. So you think about, okay, what do I need for later on to get ready for the PLT? If I keep working my way through, I have a resource in here on exactly what is the PLT. And so this will give you guidance. This is the Praxis Study Guide for the PLT for grades K6. I have other resources that I can share, but that sort of helps you prep for what you'll need to know. We also have the assignment instructions and rubrics and checklists generally for the whole course. Any specific assignments, I include the rubrics there. I also gave you a study plan for the PLT for creative learning environments. Okay, so it's somewhat like the materials that we had before, but it's a study plan for that K6 block of materials. And lastly, here in course documents, and this is really the best piece in it, this is pretty much everything that you need to know for the PLT. So once again, this is heavily focused on the PLT and having you really think about materials for that assessment. The goal is to get you as prepped as possible for this. You can see a lot of resources that are baked in down below, but pretty much all of this is to get you ready to go for the PLT and make sure that you are ready to rock and be successful. And I just noticed that I have that twice, so that's fine. So if we look through weekly topics and assignments, you're going to see we have week 1, 2, midterm, classroom management plan, week 3, week 4, final. So let's go to week 1. So if I go to week 1, I have a copy of the first chapter that we're going to read. I have a PDF document of slides. You will have videos in here where I basically walk you through the content for the course. Same thing with chapter 2. I'll have slides. Then you'll notice assignments in here. So I have the introduction to Flipgrid. We'll talk about that in a second. Chapter 1, Flipgrid discussion. Chapter 2, and then the first journal entry. So the first journal entry, what you're doing is you're writing up responses to this in a Google Doc. You submit that Google Doc here to the Dropbox, and then I'll read it and give you feedback. So for week 1, you are reading 2 chapters, completing the Flipgrid discussion, first introducing yourself on Flipgrid, exploring the other areas of the class here in Oaks, and then last but not least, you're trying to think through this first journal entry and thinking about what these components are. Chances are you won't be able to answer all of these 7 points in your response, but it's a good idea to have an overview of what these different components are and what they mean for you. If we take a look at week 2, same sort of thing. I have slide decks in here for chapter 3 and chapter 4, video chapter 5 as well, sorry. Videos are forthcoming. You will have the Flipgrid discussion links in there. We'll talk more about that. And then journal entry 2. This is where, so next week you're going to want to talk with a teacher that has been teaching for a little bit and ask them some of these questions here. Obviously, this is a interesting time period right now to try and get in touch with others. So if you cannot get in touch with an educator, please shoot me a note and I'll try to connect you with someone else. We should be able to reach across the 2 classes and make these connections to work on this. We go into the midterm. If I click on midterm, I'll see that there is a midterm study guide for you, and then the midterm examination. Midterm exam will cover chapters 1 through 5. The study guide should get you ready for it, and if you've completed all your readings, you should be ready for the midterm. We can worry about that later because we'll see that later in the course. Another major assignment that you're going to want to think through is your classroom management plan. This is probably the biggest assignment of the course, so you're going to want to take a little bit of time focusing on it. Basically, what you're going to think about is a classroom of the future. You're going to design it, think about the policies and procedures you want in your classroom, and you're going to develop those. So we're going to stop. I'm going to start at the bottom here. You're going to devise a classroom management plan and a system that you'll use in your future classroom. I want you to think about your personal beliefs, what brought you to this point, what type of educator and learner you are, what your future classroom will look like. I want you to think about what an effective classroom setup would look like. What does it sound like? What does learning sound like? What does learning look like? How will we know that learning is happening in your future classroom? So there are tools in here to build your own classroom and design your own classroom. I want you to go through that experience. I want you to think about what this would look like, what it means to you. In that, I want you to think about basic classroom rules and think about consequences and procedures. How are you, first off, what sort of learning environment do you want? And then how are you going to achieve that? How are you going to make that learning happen in your classroom? So we're going to think through that and develop those plans and policies and procedures. You're going to write up a narrative on how you want to connect your classroom and your learners with the larger community in and out of the classroom, in and out of the building. Think about parents and families. You're going to write up a one-page letter to parents explaining your discipline philosophy, your rules, your management plan, basically a getting to know you for parents and for the community. And then I want you to wrap up with a discussion about how you think this will be effective. How do you think this will be effective for your learners? How do you think it will help support academic achievement, but also, probably more importantly, social, emotional well-being, mental health, physical health, and their ability to be critical, flexible, persistent thinkers. So you're going to develop all of these materials and try and make sense of what this would look like. We have rubrics and criteria, but to get this done, what we're going to do is we're going to work our way through some of these components up here. So we have different activities for you to build your classroom, or think about what discipline looks like, or take a look at PBIS. You take the ACE test to think about your own background and your experiences, and all of these component parts and more you'll work into that management plan, and I'll give you examples of what this would look like as we get a little bit closer. But it's something to think about now as we proceed. If we go to week 3, once again, we have slide decks and materials for chapters 6, 7, and 8, and the journal entry. We will have Flipgrid discussions for that as well. Chapter 4, same thing. Slide deck for chapters 9 and 10, journal entry, Flipgrid discussions, all of that. The same structure again and again and again. Mainly I keep the same structure so that there's, it's a little bit easier to stay on top of where we're headed with this. And last but not least, the final is there. The final has a final exam study guide and the exam in there for you to complete. Supplemental resources. So if we look in supplemental resources, we have more journal articles on a variety of topics related to class, how to write lesson plans, how to think about academic integrity and plagiarism in your work and in your class. Sample classroom management plans might be something that you want to take a look at. Sample letters to communicate with parents, once again, might be something that you want to take a look at. Might be a way to think through that big classroom management plan. Building your classroom might be something you want to take a look at. Relationship building might be something you want to take a look at. We're also thinking about legal regulations, rules, expectations, consequences, teacher tips, techniques. It's really a very broad area that should help you as you think about your learners, think about building that future classroom management plan, and help you do the best job that you can in that assignment. So that's the overview of what we're doing here in Oaks. The last thing I want to take a look at is Flipgrid. So if we take a look at Flipgrid, Flipgrid is a digital tool. It's a way to encourage discussion across classes. It's a way to encourage discussion within classes. The nice thing about Flipgrid is I can put in a topic and you can have video chats pretty much back and forth with one another. The nice thing about Flipgrid for our purposes is that we can have relatively asynchronous discussions. What this means is that we can have discussions that don't operate at the same time. During the summer, there are some of us that will be very busy. There are some of us that will be on the run and we'll have to check in when we can. This is an attempt to try and create a learning space, a learning opportunity where we can put a prompt out there. You can tune in when possible. You can respond to your peers, and you can engage in the readings as well. So it would be a good idea to first complete the readings. So first read chapter 1, after you've read chapter 1, take a day to think about it and then come in and respond to the prompt for chapter 1. So if I go into chapter 1, I have, what is it about teaching and learning? What is it about teaching that most interests and excites you? What are you most concerned about? And then, how does this align with the concepts and skills associated with effective classroom management as defined in the text? So read chapter 1, think about what they've identified, think about your perspective as a learner, and think about how you feel about this and try to respond here in Flipgrid. So one of the things to keep in mind is with Flipgrid, they limit you to a minute and 30 seconds for your response. There's a chance that you won't get it done perfectly the first time. At least I don't. So what you might want to do is go back in and re-record, or maybe have a 1 or 2 part response. There's really no wrong way to use Flipgrid. It's a way to encourage discussion, it's a way to encourage community, and a way to make us feel a little bit more connected in this online class. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Once again, this is for 407 and 507. We're thinking about creating learning environments in our classes that are collaborative and inclusive. We're going to think about how do we support our learners in our classrooms, and how do we design safe spaces for them to be the best that they can be. So thanks if you've listened to the end of this. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time in this course. If you've come to the end of this video and you know the word artichoke, you can reference the word artichoke at some point in our class this summer, and I will give you extra credit to see if anyone's paying attention to the end of this video. And with that, I will sign off. Hopefully you're all doing well. Please let me know if I can support you in any way. I really appreciate this time that we have together.